Dear friends, after knowing the lag compensation and leak compensation individually, let us try to know the third type of the compensation networks, that is lag lead compensation together. This kind of compensation is applicable in the cases where we would be requiring the advantages or benefits from both the individual types of compensators. Like whatever advantages lie with the lag compensation, whatever advantages lie with the lead compensation, both of them are required for the compensation of the given network in such a system where highest level of sophistication is required, highest level of accuracy is required, highest stability is required, highest speed of response is required, very good bandwidth is required, oscillation should be low as possible. That if that is the requirement, if all the requirements that makes a control system to be a good control system, if all these requirements such as stability, accuracy, speed of response, bandwidth, the oscillations, if all these requirements are required for the system is going to be very, very high, the requirements are needed to be at their highest quality levels, in such a case we will require the compensators of both the types. That is why we will come out with a compensator which is a combination of both lag compensation as well as lead compensation. That type of combination, that type of compensation is called lag lead compensation. Now, what if we try to define lag lead compensation in short, then it improves the steady state output both leads and lags in different frequency regions in terms of phase. So, in lag compensation, the steady state output was lagging behind the input in phase obviously. Then in lead compensator, the steady state output was leading beyond the input in phase, whereas here in lag lead compensation the steady state output lags behind the input as well leads the input in different frequency regions in terms of phase. So that makes this type of compensation to give the advantages of both the lag compensation as well as the lead compensation. Now, just like in the previous two cases, we considered or we demonstrated lag compensation and lead compensation by simple electrical compensation network. Here also the lag lead compensation is demonstrated using an electrical network. This is a simplest lag lead compensation network. Now here if we try to see the derivation of the transfer function for the compensator itself, if we try to see, then here this resistance and the capacitance C1, they are in parallel to one another. So that is why we accord them as Z1. So Z1 we derived, we got R1 divided by 1 plus R1 C1 S. How do we get it? With the help of Kirchhoff's law, we get 1 by R is equal to 1 by R1 or 1 by R2. As such, if we try to apply that formula using Kirchhoff's law, electrical components in parallel, then we get to we get this Z1 which is given by R1 divided by 1 plus R1 C1. Yes. Again here, these two are in series. Again apply Kirchhoff's law. The voltage across the capacitor and voltage across the resistor R2. Then if we try to apply the Kirchhoff's law to that, and in the combination we call it as Z2, then we get to know that Z2 will be given by R2 C2S plus 1 divided by C2 of S. Then what is the voltage across the input? The voltage across the input will be equal to the voltage across Z1 and the voltage across Z2. So VZ1 plus VZ2. Then VZ1 we know, VZ2 we know, multiplied by the current flowing through the network. Then what is the voltage across the output of the system? The voltage across the output of the system will be equal to the voltage across the last component of the network. So the voltage across Z2 is nothing but the voltage across the output of the system. That is what has been written over here. Then the voltage across the output is given by obviously Z2 into Is, Z2 is R2 C2S plus 1 divided by C2 into S. So, that is what has been written over here. Now, the transfer function is given by the output, it is the ratio of output to the input. So, the transfer function for this lag lead compensator is given by V naught of t divided by Va of t. So, V naught of S divided by Va of S. So, Vi we know, V naught we know. So, just substitute over here, this is what you are going to get. On further simplification, we get to this equation. We will substitute in place of R1 C1 as T1, R2 C2 as T2, then R1 R2 C1 C2 as alpha beta T1 T2. If we substitute that, then we will strive to get to this equation V naught of S divided by Va of S, which is equal to S plus 1 by T1 into S plus 1 by T2 divided by S plus 1 by beta plus 1 into S plus 1 by alpha into T2. This is what is the transfer function for the lag lead compensator. Now, why we went for the lag lead compensator? Obviously, the lag lead compensation or lag lead compensator should compensate to the electrical network or should compensate for the system performance of any given control system in such a way that it should possess the advantages of both lag compensation as well as lead compensation. So, characteristics of lag lead compensation, if we try to see, it possesses 2 poles and 2 zeros. It is compensated if the poles and zeros are subjected to the cancellation. Then here, as we know, lag compensator gives good steady state response. The lead compensator gives us good transient response of the system or improves transient response of the system. Now, lag lead compensator should give us improvement in both steady state response of the system as well as the transient response of the system. That is what is attained over here. Both steady state and transient response of the system will be improved if we use lag lead compensator. Then increases lag lead compensator also increases the bandwidth of the system. Then it gives us faster response, which is one of the feature of the lead compensation. It improves the response of the system or it gives faster response of the system. Then bandwidth increase, this is one of the advantages of the lead lag compensation, and faster speed of response is one of the advantages of the lead compensation. So, both are incorporated over here. Accuracy of the system will be improved. Obviously, it means to say whatever amount of input you give it to the system, the proportionate amount of output is going to be availed at the end. So, that is what it means to say by accuracy of the system. Then damping improves. This is again one of the advantages of lead compensation. So, damping improves means stability is also going to get better. Then rise time, settling time will be improved. Obviously, when damping is getting improved, obviously the rise and settling time should also be improved. Then high pass and low pass filter can be achieved. See, lag compensation was acting as a low pass filter. Lead compensator advantage is it is a high pass filter. So, when it is a combination of both lag and lead compensation, then obviously it has to be acting as both high pass as well as the low pass filter. So, all these characteristics will tell us that the lag lead compensation is a combination or it is a consolidation of the advantages of both the lag compensation as well as the lead compensation. So, this is what is about the system compensation. So, we started with the system compensation. See, we learned system compensation like what makes a system to perform better only when the system satisfies the requirements of a good control system. That is stability, accuracy, speed of response, bandwidth, oscillations, etc. The design engineer, when designing the system or the control system, then he or she will have considered all these requirements, and he or she will have also considered some of the external disturbances that are going to be a part of the operating system. Then over a period of time, due to wear and tear, due to aging or due to any other factor, or even maybe due to some of the external factors or disturbances which at the design time or design process were not existing. So may not have been considered. Due to any of these reasons, the system performance may get hindered, or there may be a performance deficiency rising in the system. So to compensate for that, or to bring back the system to perform better or as per the specification, what design engineer does is he would add a device during the design process itself. He will add a device, he or she will add a device into the system, and that device is called compensator, system compensator. What does this do? The system compensator compensates for the performance deficiency of the system, so that the required specifications could be met by the control system. Now, the control system compensation is classified into 4 different types. One, series or cascade compensation. So whenever the compensator is required by the system itself, the required compensation by the system itself is such that the compensator has to be added in series with the plant or the mechanism or the system, right. In such a case, it is called series or cascade compensation. And in some of the system, the requirement may be such that the compensation or compensator should be placed in parallel to the plant or the process or the mechanism. So in such a case, the compensation is called parallel or feedback compensation. Or it may be required that the compensator be placed in the path of the input, then it is called input compensators. And if the requirement for compensation is such that the compensator is required to be placed at the output, in the path of the output, then it is called output compensation. Then the types of compensating networks or compensation networks, there are 3 types of compensation networks. One is lag compensation, the other one is the lead compensation, the third one is lag lead compensation. Lag compensation, the steady state output will be lagging behind the input. That is what is the key understanding of the lag compensation. Now, that is suitable for series or cascade compensation, and then the derivation of the transfer function for that type of compensation is also known to us now, and then the features or the characteristics of a lag compensation we have also known, right. Then lead compensation, there where the steady state output will lead beyond the input of the system in phase. And then again, the transfer function is also known to us, and the characteristics are also known. It will improve the damping and it will improve the transient response of the system as such. Then when the system is very highly sophisticated, when the system is going to be very critical as far as maybe there may be a great threat to human life if the system does not perform well, or there may be a very huge loss in terms of money or wealth or economy to any country or the globe if the system fails. In such cases, there the requirements of the control system need to be at their peak of their quality. That is where in such a case, both the lag and lead compensator advantages may be required. That is where we try to go for lag lead compensation, which will have a combination or which will have the consolidation of the advantages of both lag compensation as well as the lead compensation. So all those characteristics are listed here. This is about the system compensation. Now, let us try to get into the last part of your syllabus in module 5, that is the state space variable analysis or state space technique or state variable technique, or rather it is also called state space analysis. This subject has been designed with the perspective of giving a brief understanding about the control system as a subject. What is a control system? How many different types of control systems are there? What are the construction models of the simple control systems? And then what are the requirements of a good control system? Then this subject also teaches us how to evolve a mathematical function or mathematical model that represents the functionality of the system, so that we can analyze the system and come out with a mathematical model and then generalize it. This subject also teaches us the time domain analysis as well as the frequency domain analysis, wherein we will use various techniques, such as if it is frequency domain analysis, then we may be using say Nyquist plots, polar plots or Bode attenuation diagrams to analyze the system, to know whether the system is stable or not. Then if at all the system turns out to be stable, then will it be stable for any given input? Or is there any limitation in terms of the quantity or amount of input up to which the system will be stable, and beyond that the system will become unstable? So, what are the conditions under which the system will be stable, and what are the conditions beyond which or at which the system becomes unstable? So, those analysis techniques such as Bode attenuation diagrams, or maybe the Nyquist plots, or maybe the time domain analysis methods such as root locus technique, all of them are Ruth Heurid's completely analytical method. All of them will tell us, or they give us the guidelines, they give us a method, or they give us a technique with which we will be able to analyze the system, and will try to know whether the system is going to be stable or not, or rather we will try to know whether the requirements of a good control system are met by the given system to us or not. So far we have followed the classical control theory. If we try to know, so far in the analysis of a control system, we have followed classical control theory and a bit of model control approach, a bit. Much of the time response method or analysis is a part of model control theory for control engineering, and rest of the complete frequency domain analysis as well as some of the time domain analysis is towards the classical control theory or classical approach for designing and analyzing a control system. The engineer, why we should get to know, that has been explained to all the viewers in the very beginning of this subject lecture sessions, as well as even as and when we felt that it is required to be emphasized, we have told even now. See, why engineers should know this subject, that is one of the key contribution towards the composition of the syllabus of this subject. It is because engineers are the people who are going to design, who are going to plan, who are going to analyze, and who are going to manufacture, who are going to assess the quality, and then come out with the product which is a control system, and then sell it to the end user. So, we are supposed to know what are the various ways in which we can design, what are the methods that will give us or guide us to understand the control system, whether it is good system or bad system. What are the parameters to be considered while designing a good control system? So, all these things are to be known by the people who are actually involved in the design and development of the product of control system. And who are the people? We are the people. We are the engineers. We are mechanical engineers. We may be electrical. We may be electronics engineers. We are the people who have to know in depth of the subject, so that we will be able to consider the design and analysis from all possible dimensions, so that the product in terms of a good control system that we are trying to bring about, that product is complete in all respects, and it will be useful and satisfactory to the end user. That is what is the key agenda with which the composition of the subject has been defined. Okay. So, in the design and analysis of a control system, we have followed two methods. One is classical control theory, the other one is modern control theory. So, classical control theory is also called transfer function based theory, and the modern control theory is also called state space analysis or state variable theory. The classical control theory, therein we make use of the transfer function, we evolve the transfer function, and then by using the transfer function and with the help of various techniques such as the Nyquist plots, Bode plots or so, we will try to analyze a system and try to get to know the condition of the system, or we will try to come out with the parameter values wherein the system continues to be a good control system and thereafter it may turn into a bad control system. Due to the reason that up to some limit of input parameter, the system may be stable, the system may be accurate, the speed of response may be good with the system, and beyond some value of the parameter, the system may become unstable, the system may become inaccurate, the system may become poor in its speed of response. This analysis was carried out with the help of Bode plots, Nyquist plots as such. And then we know that those graphical cum analytical methods what we have used using frequency domain analysis, they are all approximate methods. They are not 100% accurate methods. They are more or less accurate but not 100% accurate methods. We need more accurate ways of doing the design and analysis of a good control system. We require more accurate ways of doing the analysis, design and analysis of a good control system. Whereas one of the advantage with the classical control theory is for simple control systems, it is really a worth applying system, number one. And second thing, it is not very tedious. Third, it is for simple networks, it is very easy to apply. It gives results in a very short span of time. Right, computation is very, very easy with the help of classical control theory. Whereas it also considers single input and single output. The analysis, the design and analysis starts from 0 as its initial condition. Whereas many of the systems will be such that from somewhere in between values, a value which will take us in space, from that value we will have to evolve, we will have to design and analyze a control system, which is not possible with the help of classical control theory such as the Bode attenuation diagrams or root locus plot or maybe the Nyquist plot. There the initial condition necessarily has to be at 0. Only then we can start the design and analysis process for a control system. Whereas in a model control theory, this very major advantage is ruled out, number one. And second thing is, the classical control theory is applicable only for single input and single output problems or systems. Even in some of the problems, those problems we may not have solved here, but still in some of the problems, even when there were more than 2 inputs or more than 2 outputs were there, we assumed all inputs to be 0 and considered only one input at a time. And we considered all outputs to be 0 and we considered only one output at a time. Those methods of analyzing the system stability or the designing methodologies are applicable only to those systems which will have only one input and one output systems. Whereas all these drawbacks with the classical control theory, obviously it has some advantages, it will have some shortcomings also. We cannot say those are the disadvantages, but shortcomings are there. That is, those are approximate methods. Those will be applicable only to single input and single output systems, the classical control theory. Whereas the advantages are, it is very simple to analyze. It gives us the results instantaneously, very easy. The design process itself is very easy, right? So some advantages as well as some disadvantages will always be a combination for any given system or a device or a mechanism. So to overcome these shortcomings, such as its applicability restricted to only single input, single output system, such as it is approximate method, the classical control theory is approximate. In order to overcome those shortcomings, people came out with model control theory, which is rather based on time response or time domain analysis. Whether it is classical control theory or a modern control theory, whether it is a transfer function based approach or a state space analysis approach, what is the important requirement is, it should give us the outcome what is intended to design and analyze a control system. So what do we do with classical control theory? We study the system, given system, we evolve a mathematical model which is called a transfer function, and then using that transfer function, we'll try to analyze and assess the system for its requirements such as stability, speed of response, accuracy, and try to declare a system to be stable system or accurate system or speed of response or a combination of all of them. That is what we do. Even with model control theory, what is intended to be done? Same thing. Even with modern control theory or state space analysis approach, we are intending to get or derive a transfer function. We are intending to analyze the system to look at the requirements of a control system such as stability, speed of response and accuracy. We are trying to assess the system for its requirements and then try to accord a system to be a good control system or a bad control system. Or in the design process also, we are trying to accommodate all these requirements into the system and come out with a good control system. So the outcome from both the approaches is the same, whether it is classical control theory or maybe it is a model control theory. The outcome has to be the same, but what is the credibility of the outcome that we get, that is more important. So in the classical control approach, it is easy, it is more suitable for simple applications, whereas it is an approximate method and there are some limitations that it is applicable to only single input and single output systems. Whereas here in the model control approach, it is based on state variable technique or state space analysis, and then it is applicable for complex systems. The computation is going to be much costly and complex, and then whereas its advantages are it is applicable to both single input, single output as well as multiple input and multiple output systems, and then it is 100% accurate method of analyzing a system. Now, the state space analysis, so that is what I was talking about. And one of the major shortcomings of classical control approach was the initial condition should always be considered as from 0, whereas in the state space analysis, the system can be analyzed or designed from any state in space. That is why it is called state space analysis. The system can be designed, the system can be analyzed considering its condition in any state in space, which is not possible with the classical control approach. So any system, any physical system is represented with the help of a set of differential equation of any order. A physical system can be, its functionality, its performance can be represented by a set of differential equations of any order, and they can be reduced to first order simple differential equations and can be represented with the help of a vector matrix notation, and that is called a state space model or state variable model or state space technique. With the state space variable, that is when we have reduced any order or nth order differential equation for any physical system to first order differential equation and then represent the same with the help of a vector matrix, from that vector matrix we can evolve a transfer function and then we can analyze the given system for the control system requirements. This analysis is called state variable analysis or state space analysis of the system. So with even the classical control approach or the transfer function technique, we were evolving the transfer function, then analyzing the system for its requirements and then according the system to be a good control system or bad control system by knowing the stability also. Same thing is done here also, but the approach is different. Then if we try to just summarize the differences between classical and modern control theory, then obviously classical control approach is a time or frequency domain approach, whereas this is modern control theory is a purely time domain approach alone. Then the initial conditions, obviously it has to be assumed to 0, which is one of the shortcoming with classical approach, whereas here in the modern control approach it can be assumed to 0 or it need not be assumed to 0. It can be from any state. That is why it is called state space what we will write is need not be assumed at 0. Okay. Then the third difference is this classical control approach is applicable to only linear time invariant system. Linear time invariant means with the time, with the passage of time, the system it should not be changing the equation that is representing it. Whereas modern control approach is applicable to both linear and non-linear as well as time variant and time invariant systems. Then classical approach is restricted to only single input, single output systems, whereas the modern control approach is applicable to both single output, single input, single output, as well to the multiple input and multiple output system. That is why MIMO, multiple input, multiple output, single input, single output. Then classical approach, it does not provide any information regarding the internal state of the system, whereas here it gives all the information about the internal behavior of the system. The classical approach, it is difficult for complex system. As I had told you in the beginning itself, it is applicable to only simple systems, whereas here the modern control approach, it will be easy to handle even the complex systems. The last difference that we can talk about is classical approach is based on trial and error method. That is why it is an approximate method, whereas modern approach, optimal solutions can be obtained. So with these differences what have been listed over here, right, you can write, if the question is asked something like explain classical control approach, then you can just, if you collectively write this one paragraph, fine. Explain modern control approach, if you write collectively all these points, it becomes the answer for that. If they ask for differentiating the classical approach or modern control approach, obviously the same way it is going to work better. With that, we have completed the system compensation and we have taken a preamble, we have given a preamble for the state space analysis or state variable technique. Again, let me tell you, state space analysis or space variable technique is again going to give us a method. It is offering a method wherein we will be able to derive the transfer function as well analyze the given system, so that we will be able to address a system, whether it is stable system or accurate system, or it is with good speed of response or bad speed of response, or whether its bandwidth and oscillations are good or bad. Thereby we can address the system to be a good control system or bad control system. This is what the help these methods or approaches are going to give us in the design and analysis of a control system. Thank you.